What's going on, guys? It's Bromley at Empire Barbell, and today we are wrapping up Greg Nuckols' 28 free programs. We have already gone through squatting, benching, and the first few installments of deadlifting. He's got recommendations for once, twice. We're on 3 times per week for the deadlift for beginner, intermediate, advanced. So it was a lot of information we covered. Go ahead and check out his site. He uses this as a lead magnet to get emails, but there's a lot of good information in this. So go to Stronger by Science, check these out for yourselves. See the attachment that he has that goes along with this with all the relevant information for what his recommendations are. A lot of good stuff there. So we're going into deadlifting 3 times per week. Now this is danger zone right here. 3 times per week deadlifting is very difficult. It is a huge hit on your ability to recover. It makes it very difficult to do other things like squatting or strongman events. Well, it makes it damn near impossible. And it's one of the reasons why I stay away from it. I don't typically prescribe twice a week deadlifting. In fact, with stronger lifters, you're usually looking at heavy pulling once every other week. So it's important to know that with this frequency of training, going 3 times per week with something like a deadlift, you are a powerlifting purist. You're focused only on the barbell lifts. You have most, if not all, of your training volume wrapped up in those 3 movements or some close variation of it. And that makes it possible to really account for all of your recovery capacities around that really high frequency. If you're of the mindset that a training session should be difficult, this is not for you. This isn't about creating fatigue or pushing yourself as hard as possible at each workout. This is about accruing a total weekly amount of work and working in different enough thresholds throughout the week that you're actually able to recover enough to perform that workout. Remember, growth happens when a increase in stress or a new stress substantial enough to create growth is paired with substantial recovery so that you can meet the demands of each week's work without backsliding. That's what a good program is going to do. So this is a very unique flavor. So you're warned going into this. First off, beginner. I can't think of any scenario where I would even have a beginner deadlift 3 times a week. So let's just say this is somebody who's already been training for some period of time and is looking for some variety and wants to dedicate a specific period of time to building up their deadlift capacity. And you can already see percentages are prescribed. Well, true novice programs and some of the ones Nuckols has written before, they didn't have percentages prescribed because novices don't have meaningful training percentages. Their training maxes aren't based on anything substantial because they're not technical. They have no business getting under maximum loads, and their training maxes change drastically week to week. So let's just assume that this beginner is actually late novice, early intermediate, somebody who can actually hoist a few hundred pounds with passable technique. So this is what we're looking at, weeks 1, 2, and 3. So we're only going on a 3-week run. Day 1, you're on this progression, 15 singles at 60%, 65%, 55%. That's a lot of singles. It's only 15 total reps, and it's not at a very high percentage, so the work isn't that bad. But you'll notice something strange happens when you do the same amount of work with the same amount of weight and you just stretch it out over more sets. There's an element of it that's a little more challenging. You would think more density, more reps done in a single set would come with a lot more fatigue and a lot more stress. It's just a different type of stress. Individual touches, individual sets, even if they're relatively easy, they add up. I mean, think of how beat up you've been if you've ever dug a ditch or helped somebody move. It's not that any one effort is really all out, it's the accumulation of all of them. So this is a very unique type of stress. Now, all of these singles are very strength specific, even though the percentages are low, because you're only hitting singles. You're practicing your setup, only moving 1 rep at a time. All of your technique is in the context of just that 1 rep and what that's going to look and feel like. So you see that the first day, 60%, day 2, 70%, day 3, 80%. So you're keeping it at singles, but you're just dropping the amount of sets and you're raising the percentage, the amount of weight, and then as you get through the week. And then each week, you're increasing that by a set percentage, and then we recover a little bit. That drops to 55%, and then that drops to 65% on day 2 of week 3. So increasing through week 1, increasing through week 2, recover, new 1 rep max. That's how that goes. Even that, at the end of 3 weeks, testing a new 1 rep max, I guess it makes a kind of sense on a singles based program. This type of split is not very common. So I'm not saying that this doesn't work. It's obviously based on sound principles. You have an undulation of percentages all with singles, so it allows recovery, so you're still getting technique work. There's a substantial total amount of weekly work being done. It's just distributed in a very peculiar, very unique way. So I would actually be interested to see how somebody does on this, just to get feedback. How beat up were you at the end? Did it seem easier or harder than if you were to, let's say, redistribute? I mean, 15 singles, that's 3 sets of 5, or 5 triples, that's the same thing. So looking at the way it progresses, I mean, 85% for 5 singles versus 1 set of 5. It's kind of hard to gauge with somebody that's skewed this hard to one side how substantially different that would be. What stands out is that you're going to be as fresh as possible for all of these reps while still maintaining a high weekly amount of work, and that makes it very interesting. I'm not quite sure what the implications for this would be, so I'd be eager to see what that looks like in practice. Not loving the 1 rep max at the end for a beginner program, but I mean, like I said at the beginning, let's just pretend this isn't a beginner program. Let's pretend that's more intermediate, because the fact that there are percentages, it is singles based. Beginners do not need specificity. This is specificity. Beginners need a wide base, need broad work. So let's assume this is late novice, early intermediate. So going into these later programs, so at this point he ditches the intermediate, advanced labels, and he just has a low volume, medium volume, high volume that all operates off the same template. So I'm assuming his target audience are more intermediate lifters. Going 3 times per week, we see the same undulation throughout the week. You have an 80% day for 4x4, so that's heavy-ish. You have a 60% day for 10 singles, so that's lighter speed work, lighter technique work like we're doing up here. And then you have a day of just rows and hip thrusters for some volume. So we're getting indirect deadlift volume. That's my preferred method if you are trying to get more frequency on your deadlift training, is not to try and fit in more deadlift specific work, because it does run the risk of being so taxing. Find other exercises that work extraordinarily well with carrying over to the deadlift and widening out your deadlift base. Any type of upper back work, as in bent rows, is going to be a good option. Hip thrusters, glute bridges, those are good options as well. I mean, anything that works your hip extension is gonna work. So then the 80% goes to 85 for 3x3, then 90 for 2x1. So now we're getting heavier, and then you hit a new max. Whereas the undulation on these days runs up as well. 60%, it goes 10, 15, then 10 singles is kind of a recovery day, and then 20 singles the week you hit your new max. So that jumps right back up. So this high volume split, and there was a medium volume split that I didn't put because it's literally halfway in between the low volume and high volume. Literally the only difference, you add 2 sets onto day 1, so 6 sets of 4, 5 sets of 3, 4 sets of 1. You jump a bunch of sets on your 60% day, 20 singles, 25 singles, 15 singles, 30 singles on the last week. That's a lot of singles. And that's on an EMOM. You should all be on an EMOM every minute on the minute. So that's 30 minutes of deadlifting with 60%. Have fun doing that, guys. And then you add in sumo deadlifts on day 3. So again, if he's calling that more advanced, just like all of his other programs, it's just a logical increase on the intermediate, on this, the low volume phase. If you acclimated to that, you're going to find that down the road you can disrupt homeostasis by just adding more volume. And sumos are, again, relatively easier to recover from than all of your conventional work. So with this one, not a huge fan of 3 times a week deadlifting. It's possible, but it's only really beneficial for very, very, very specific lifters. And I don't think any of you are better off trying to replicate what hyper-specific, like Russian state-sponsored lifters do. I mean, there really isn't a big benefit. You have to walk a narrower tightrope. There's less room for error, and it's boring as shit. And when you do overstep, when you do wiggle out a little too much on that tightrope, you're gonna find that it sets you back quite a ways. You get frustrated. It's just very easy to overtrain. So it makes it less ideal. Why would you give yourself less room for error, make training more boring and monotonous, and increase the likelihood that you're gonna eventually overtrain? You want more tools in your toolbox, things that are gonna build you up without the risk of running your training off the side of the road just because you wanted to follow this arbitrary level of specificity. So again, not a huge fan of this. Now, if any of you are intermediates in some sense, if you can, deadlift, in the mid 300 pounds and up, for you guys, if you can deadlift over 225 for a female, running this I would be eager to see what running this led to. Mainly, I'd be eager to see what the fatigue would be like, and if you did notice any substantial increase by the end of it. But I think in the theme of once per week, twice per week, three times per week, I think it was more he was going for just completion for the sake of it. That was the theme of all of his benching and squatting. It's much easier to do those 3 times a week. Deadlifting, not so much. So it seems like he just thought, okay, high frequency, that means very, very low working volume in each set. So singles seemed like a better opportunity for recovery, which seemed to make sense in the context of a 3 times per week split. So I get what his mind was trying to do here. I just don't know anybody that pulls like this with relative success. So if any of you do, I'd be eager to hear from you. How does this mirror what you do? If you've pulled your methodologies from any influential people in the field, or if you've had to come up with things on your own as you developed, because with the advanced label, just like we've said with all of the other programs, advanced means very different things to very different people, and a lot of it just hinges on how you trained getting up to that advanced stage, because it's not just advanced as a lifter because you're strong, it's advanced because you're really dialed into a specific methodology of training, and they all have different implications for them. So anyways, that's my rant on 3 times per week deadlifting. If you're brave and you want to give it a shot, run through it, leave your experiences in the comment box, leave your questions in the comment box, take it to the forum. The guys on the forum would love to hear if you have any experience with stuff like this. I would too. empire-forum.com. So thanks for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley from Empire Barbell. I'll see you.